Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Maryann Petri. There's a press release. Family Rights Rally, the Children's Movement, will be happening Saturday, May 21st, 2022, at the Washington Monument, Washington, D.C., Northeast Quadrant, between the time of 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. The sponsor is Family Forward Project. It's to unify and provide information and networking opportunities for families dealing with child protective services and child welfare. It's to unify all platforms across the nation to make one major statement and demand for reform. Many people are speaking out and drawing attention to the injustice through child welfare. This is the time for change. So please join us there at Washington, D.C. I have a new guest. Her name is Amy Betts. She's a protective mom, parent, advocate, and the president of Aidileys, a nonprofit in North Carolina. It's spelled Aidileys. It works to improve the quality for life for women and their families. Amy is trying to be the change she wants to see. We are going to discuss legal abuses and abuse of power within the family court and its corruption, unlawful ex-parte communication, and fraudulent charges to keep the litigation going and the attorney's money flowing. Welcome to the show, Amy Betts. How are you?
Good, thank you. And thank you for having me finally. I'm sorry if I'm late.
Oh, you're fine. No. So I'm just glad you're on. So how did you begin all this? When did all this begin for you?
In 2007, my husband at the time and I separated. And then we found ourselves in family court. In North Carolina, you have to be separated for 1 year before you can get divorced. And so what happens in North Carolina is they use that year for litigation. So it's just a way for, not just a way, but for the attorneys to make a lot of money off families and pretty much everything that families are going through. And so when I got involved, I had an attorney in 2007, but then over not just that year, but the next 2 years, we stayed in court trying to litigate the divorce. Mm-hmm. And so I was, because I'd hired an attorney, doing everything they told me to do. But then in the end of 2009, beginning of 2010, my ex-husband got primary physical custody. And that's when I learned really how family court orders are written. And I learned that, these attorneys can put in them whatever they want. And so when that happened and I got an order like that, I was like, there's got to be something I can do to change this. But I didn't know anything about the law except that I needed to get an attorney. And so I ended up, trying to fight that order. And I got, I used an attorney, but right up to the end, when it was finally time for our trial, once we were able to get discovery together and putting requests for motions to be heard in court, and then things, kept happening, it was like I was stuck in this cycle of going to court and I couldn't get out. So we did finally get divorced. And then I realized that the court system did not function the way that any normal human being thinks that it should. And so I ended up being on the bad end of that. So I saw it firsthand and I was experiencing it and living it. So I just, at that point, decided, I'm just going to have to find a way to try to work with my ex. And he was extremely, at that point, controlling of me in every aspect. And he used the court to his advantage because he was able to get and file he could file pretty much any motion and the judge would hear it and pretty much give him anything he requested. And because I wasn't doing anything that was wrong or, it was just like arguments that him and I were having. And so, it got to be this long drawn out affair or, ordeal with the family court. And so I, tried to work amicably with him over the years. And then in, 2010, I ended up having a third child, but not to him. We had at this point been separated and divorced, for several years. But he didn't like that. He did not like the fact that I was having a child. I've, had moved on with my life. And so he used that opportunity again to get me back in court. So then, I'm constantly defending myself because I'd realized up to this point, an attorney wasn't doing much for me except for literally just saying, well, she didn't do this. And then, attorney wrote an order. It's full of just jargon. But anyway, so in 2014, at this point, my youngest child was 4, and her dad ended up getting literally me arrested for kidnapping. And it ended up where I, was living at the time. It was a felony kidnapping charge. So I had all these things that I had to deal with. That ex worked with my first ex. So I had these 2 men using my children in court cases and using each other as their witnesses. They're each other's witness for things. So I just was literally, fighting for my life in court. And it just got to a point where I had learned so much about the law, and I had had to deal with so much criminal activity from my 2 exes that I had to learn the law. And I ended up filing lawsuits and just doing research, avidly doing research, because I couldn't work as a school teacher. Because I had been arrested for felony kidnapping. So I spent that whole year cleaning this mess up that they had created for me. But then during that, I learned all these other things, not just about family court, but criminal court, lawsuits, jurisdiction, state court, federal courts, filing complaints. So there were all these different things that I learned. And I was like, you know what? And I started meeting all these people, and people trying to bring awareness to what was happening, and trying to expose this entire system. And then I, started meeting people that have been doing this for years. And I'm like, why is it, it's been 40 years, 50 years of this family court, which has nothing, like no good interest in anything family related at all. It's essentially a for-profit industry. And then, so in 2019, I ended up putting myself through law school. And, during this time, since 2014, I was actively advocating and doing all of these things to not just try to change my situation, but to try to understand how these things were happening, how all these people were, dealing with this and nothing was changing, but these bad things kept happening. And, I got involved with not just Child Protective Services, but it was also the Department of Health and Human Services, like the branch of it. They had social workers and different people involved in my case. And they ended up, one of the judges had appointed a guardian ad litem. And so I had learned a lot about that entire system, and then how judges appoint different services. And then what happens is, essentially, judges have immunity. And when they appoint someone, they literally give them immunity. So all these things that are transpiring, there was nothing I could do to change my situation. But what happened is when I filed a federal lawsuit, the state of Ohio took on part of it. And so I worked directly with an investigator. And I learned then, like, their perspective, from the Supreme Court level, their perspective of how things are supposed to be, and how, and so morally, like within myself, I knew that the things happening were wrong, but I didn't understand, like, how are these people doing these things? Like all the different things that they were doing, like I said, not just to me, but to tons of other parents. And so, because I'm a mother, I tended to, listen to other mothers' stories, but then I started meeting fathers, and again, depending on what jurisdiction they lived in, they were dealing with different things, but they were similar, because then, a lot of people had these, what they called ex-parte orders. And so then I learned, okay, ex-parte is one-sided. And I'm like, this is a legal thing that these courts are doing, but it's violating due process, which was one of the biggest no-nos in court. Whatever court you're in. And so, not just, so I was learning about the law, not just because I went to law school, I ended up graduating, but I'm dealing with it and I'm living it. And I'm like filing these lawsuits and I'm getting in front of judges and dealing with these other attorneys, and then in front of the district attorney, and, because I have sued the state and all these, but, so it just has been an absolute just whirlwind of things. And, I'm just having to literally not just defend myself, but kind of, sit by other people, listen to their stories, because as an active advocate, I'm, walking alongside other people dealing with, maybe not the same situation as mine, but we have, all of these fraudulent, unlawful, immoral, unethical, inhumane things that are happening, and so we're all dealing with them because of these things that are happening in family court. So, I mean, my life is like right now, I'm able to, work a full-time job and live a somewhat normal life, but this still consumes me. I mean, now it's like, it's my passion to try to do something more, to change all this.
And there's so much to be done. There's so many problems. It's, where do you begin with Title 4, B, D, and E? These are the big ones.
Well, and then, but with me, one of the things, because I've realized that the money aspect, there's so much power within that, like the attorneys control so much, and then judges that, these people can take your home if they want. They can get assistance from the IRS, with tax intercepts to find out how much money you make and where you work. So I decided that wasn't something that I wanted to focus on, because that's a level that I'm not willing to, I guess, play on. I'm not willing to go there. So I have focused more on the mental health and overall health of this because I feel like, within the family court system, the majority of people have children. It's not just the financial side, but, in my case, my children were what I was fighting for. The money thing, I was like, after a while, what, money doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, because my children are the ones that are suffering. And so at the beginning of your show, you had mentioned the event on Saturday in Washington, D.C., and I'm going to that with Aidileys, my nonprofit. And we're going to be wearing green t-shirts. And on them, I put mental health awareness, because that's something, I guess, like for the month of May, that's, I guess across mostly probably like LinkedIn, you'll see some stuff on Facebook, but, some of these awareness campaigns. But this is definitely, I think family court is one of the main components for trauma. And whether it be through Child Protective Services or, whatever agency they've got involved, in your life that you would not have, had anything to do with otherwise. But, so for me, like you said, there's all these things, all these changes that need to happen. But along the way, we have to be able to take care of ourselves, because, I mean, we're dealing with so much, legal abuses, but it's affecting and touching every aspect of our life. And then, so we're highlighting mental health awareness, but also I think a big component of this too is the inhumane things that are happening, and like you said, it's this rally. One of the things are going to be focusing on CPS and family rights. But I mean, it's all about that, but it's our human rights. And for me, like where I sit, my youngest child was taken in 2014, due to an array of fraudulent things that had happened. And there was wrongdoing found, attorneys and judges, got in trouble and different things happened, but my situation stayed the same. And so there's been no recourse whatsoever in my case for me, even though, there have been these wrongs. And so I guess, and then that would carry me into something else that I do with Aidileys is, we support a lot of these causes to help bring awareness and attention to these things. And Opt-in USA and then American United International, they also are bringing awareness to some of these inhumane acts, but it falls in line with pretty much everything that we're doing to reform this entire system, I think.
Mhm.
I think it's because it's so much more than just family court. It's the whole family court system.
Mhm. Yeah, these courts of equity that are destroying families for generations to come.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I
I
mean,
Oh,
mhm.
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, and when you talk about the court of equity, because the family courts are so powerful, I mean, they're touching every aspect of our life. They're making criminals out of parents and children that normally, wouldn't be dealing with these type things had it
Mhm.
not been for family court.
Mhm. I also think, branching off of that, these people that make these false accusations to get parents into trouble and then their kids taken away for no reason. And even if the parent is exonerated, the judge doesn't even honor that and return the child to whatever the agreement was before. I
Yeah,
really think they
exactly.
should, well, first of all, I always say they should abolish CPS, but on top of that,
Yes.
whoever is making these fraudulent phone calls must give their name. I think everyone should know who's making these phone calls, and I think that would decrease the lies.
Yeah, especially for them to be able to keep some type of statistics, for not just who's making the complaints, but they would have an overall view of, there needs to be a timeline. For me, with Aidileys, what I'm trying to do is, like I'm working, trying to get funding to do not just data collection, but create data that doesn't exist, kind of like what you're talking about. And in North Carolina, there was a study done with CPS and DHHS, and they found that these agencies are ineffective and inefficient. So, there's a variety of things that they're doing that are, immoral, unlawful, and the state recognizes it, but still, these things are still happening.
I I want to see an end to it. Some people say, well, it might take 7 years for it to be reformed, at least the family court system. I don't know. I don't know what to think.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard the 7-year thing. I do know that things are slow to change, but something else I know, and that I think has been good for this, I guess, movement, is that, regardless of your opinion, I think that Donald Trump has really been able to get people's eyes open to the fact that the media lies about things and, gives their perspective. And I think that that's helped us in a way, even now with, and again, regardless of how you feel about certain people, they're highlighting Johnny Depp and the Amber Heard trial. Britney Spears with her guardianship. These things are getting in the news now where they would not have otherwise. And, so I think that too has been, very beneficial to help move things along. And us, the movement to get more attention. But I think something that's lacking is experts in the court, because they're considering, the courts are considering CPS as the experts, and a lot of times you have, 18, 19-year-old kids coming, going to college, maybe a 2-year degree, and they're coming out and they're making decisions for families. And these, children, because, they've, been 18 for, a couple of years, are making these huge decisions, not understanding the depth of the harms that are being caused. And so for me, CPS is not, a group of experts. Not, I mean, I agree with you. I think the CPS needs abolished, especially when they're doing more harm than good. But again, North Carolina doesn't have that data, because, they've said CPS, that this state does not keep records for CPS and that entire, agency. So, there are a lot of different things, but I think more data will help us in a lot of different areas with this.
I mean, you're right that these are inept caseworkers. Some parents call them social workers. It's like, well, do they have the LCSW after their name? Chances are they don't. And these are people that also may have a hidden agenda as well coming after these parents.
Yeah. Well, and something I say too is that even in the family court cases, there shouldn't be one judge have the final say over, literally thousands of lives and families every day. Because essentially what's happening is these judges are making rulings based on their own personal opinions and their own morals and ethics. And I mean, all laws, all, fundamental right, everything's just out the window when these rulings come out. So, I mean, I do not think that one judge should have the final say. Not at all.
I think there should also be a panel of judges, perhaps, like, totally abolish family court and let's start over and have a panel of 3 judges, along with video cameras in the courtroom and tamper-proof mics. We should also be randomly drug testing these judges, as well as psychological evals on these judges yearly. If the police have to do it and other professionals, it must be done with these judges.
Yeah, now North Carolina, I don't know if you know this or not, they are doing a project right now. It's called the NC Task Force. It's a judicial task force. And I put a link on my website. I have a little blog and I try to share, different things that have to do with this movement. To help bring awareness. But North Carolina has created a task force and it's being funded. There's, I think, 2 or 3 different, maybe like foundations and organizations that are funding it. But I put a link on my website and it goes to kind of like the agenda of the North Carolina task force, but they have actually put cameras in the courtrooms here in 4 different counties. And North Carolina, there are 100 counties here, but this particular project that they're doing with videos in the courtroom is going to be done with 4 different counties. And I don't know exactly, but 2 counties I am aware of are Cabarrus County and Wilmington, North Carolina, which is New Hanover County, because those are 2 of the counties that my cases are in. And so they're going to be looking at some different aspects. But again, the person that's over this task force was one of the chief judges here in North Carolina, Judge Newby. So he's got a lot of say in this particular task force. So I also think it's important for people in our movement to, follow what they're doing and kind of keep up with it, because it's going to affect their perception of things and how they decide to put forth, the research and different things that they're working on here is going to, it can make a difference, I think, also for this movement.
Mm-hmm. Right, because something has to be done.
Yeah, I mean, because right now it's like they're making all the decisions. Things are happening, but one judge is deciding, all these different things, and they're creating such messes because, one of the reasons they work directly with CPS who, don't always know what they're doing, and just like with anyone else. But, if we had a level of experts, in a variety of different things, but like I said, one of the things that I'd like to get or like to see is more data, but in areas that they haven't even touched on.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, these judges are, these attorneys are contributing to judges, even the judges' kids' judge campaign.
Yeah,
I mean,
and that's the way I see it. When I drive on the road, like right now, it's early voting here in Cabarrus County in North Carolina, and I see the signs sticking on the road, and it says "Vote for Judge So and So," and I'm like, "Hey, this is his sign. I'm for sale." So if you're an attorney and you go in front of this judge, now's your chance. You go ahead and you call them up and you donate, however much money you want. In North Carolina, they have to report that. But if they don't, oh, they just get a slap on the wrist. So, hey, I might as well, don't, if as an attorney, but I'm not, I'm, a scenario here. If I were a big attorney and I went in front of Judge A all the time, and I'm like, hey, he's having a campaign to raise funds. I'm going to show up. Hey, I got $5 million. It's going to, so of course, when I'm in his courtroom, it's me against another attorney who he doesn't know. Of course he's gonna, look more favorably on me. But again, there's so many other things that are happening, like with ex-partes and the one-sided orders, and just the array of things. North Carolina needs a lot, and I know there are jurisdictions across the country, probably across the world, that are having, I know there are, that are having similar issues, but we definitely, these are state courts here, family court, but it's touching your constitutional rights, your fundamental. So these are, like I said, it's bigger than the state. It's bigger than the federal government. This is, the things that are happening are inhumane, and we need more eyes on it, not just the people within it reporting, but people that are, within it, like the judges, like with the North Carolina task force. These are the people that are making the problems, creating the problems. They shouldn't be the ones fixing them. And I'm not saying Judge Newby has any bad intentions or anything, but, my perspective, from where I sit with the people that I talk to on a daily basis, there's more that needs to be done.
Well, some judges will say, well, there's no problems in this courthouse, when everyone knows indeed that there is collusion and conflict of interest, and they just let things slide. And, it's pretty insidious how these courthouses are being run.
Oh, yeah. I've been at the courthouse filing things with the clerk, and I've saw, clerks come out from behind, their, I guess, bulletproof, whatever they're in, but they come out, and I saw them literally stand. Like, I watched one clerk stand with a dad and tell him, here's what you have to file, here's how you do it. And I was like, wait a minute, is she helping him? Is she, that, it's unlawful. But the fact that she was doing that there in the courthouse, that's just an example of, some of the things that, happen there.
Well, you were mentioning running a case through federal court, and I had tried the same thing. However, the opposing attorney told me that he knew both judges in the federal courthouse, and he would just get the case dismissed, and that's pretty much how it was going to go. And I actually got it to the appellate court, and they just closed it. And this is how deep the collusion goes.
Yeah, and that's something too that I highlight. Like, we help to share stories on the blog with Aidileys, and people are filing complaints, not just about judges, but about agency, different things, and nothing's happening. They're ignored. Oh, you get a letter, sorry, we can't help you. And then the parents or, the people that are dealing with this are reaching out to legislators, and they're like, oh, sorry, we can't help you. So then you realize, and then it's not just you, there's like hundreds of people filing complaints and going to legislators and trying to remedy because their lawsuits are getting dismissed. And, literally for no reason, just because. And I've had judges, I go in front of them and they say, well, I'll give you a ruling later. You're not going to get it today. It'll come in the mail in 30 days. And then they're like, we're dismissing it because of this, precedent. And I'm like, I don't get any say in this. I don't get to argue the fact that, you just probably made up some precedent that applies, which really has nothing to do, and there's all these timelines, and all these statutes of limitations that's pretty much created, with no, I think, there should be a timeline maybe for how long you can sue, but 30 days for getting your paperwork together and getting something filed in court. not just that, but there's just so many things that need to change with the entire system, because there is, no way to get recourse at this point.
Well, I'm hearing from parents that, why doesn't the FBI do something? Why aren't the FBI helping? Like, why isn't the FBI going through these courthouses and cleaning house?
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing too is that the states try to say these are state courts, they're getting state funds, but they're also, like with CPS, Department of Health and Human Services is one of the highly funded agencies here in North Carolina, but they get funds from the federal government. So when you have these agencies involved in these family court cases, these are federal cases. But then, you file complaints and you try to get recognition to this fact, and you can, because you have to file a motion or you have to file something to bring awareness to these people that, hey, this is, yes, I understand that family court is a state court, but you have issues within the family court, that they're creating themselves that make this a federal case. But then again, there's an array of things. You have the money issue, you have, not just with federal funding from grants with like DHHS, but then within the states, you got all of these money issues. And so I think that everyone just wants to point fingers because, no one wants to be held accountable, and then with immunity, it's, if it's in their professional capacity. But some of these people, these judges or these CPS workers, they're making decisions based on their own personal opinion. And they're violating so many, rights and laws that, constitutionally it's federal, because the majority of things, like I said, are inhumane, and they touch on the Constitution, fundamental rights and your liberty interest. I mean, that's how I see it.
I've also noticed when you file a case and the judge grants jurisdiction, the opposing attorneys will say, no, this isn't in the right jurisdiction. But it's like, but the judge ordered it that way. How come you're balking?
Yeah, and attorneys it's really an attorney's perception. That's an attorney's job, is to get everyone to see things from their point of view. But at the same time, if you have one judge, hey, maybe that judge sucked in, certain aspects of life. They probably, I'm sure a lot of them sucked in math, but yet they're making financial decisions for all these thousands of families. So that's another big one for me.
Right. I think, I know, people have said, well, Title 4D and B&E, they all have to be repealed, but that would take so much time. And, these families don't have time. Their generations are being destroyed for no good reason. I mean, and sometimes there are parents that do need their kids taken away, but for the most part, there are parents that don't see this coming, don't need to have this in their family. And
even then, the statistics, I think the statistics are out there as far as like how many kids are being taken, and evidence, research has proven different. Just talking to people, there are even YouTube groups with CPS, children of CPS, telling their stories, because they weren't allowed to speak. And, even as adults, they're being ignored. And so, I get carried away. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I do too, because I've been watching even TikTok, and there's a mom on there about her sons that were trafficked over state lines into Texas. She doesn't know where these kids are. And I think it's hashtag save Josh and Sammy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't saw that one. I do try to follow a lot of it. And, I find that now with AI, the artificial intelligence with social media, once you're connected to someone within the movement, and they're connected to so many people, a lot of it ties back. And that's why too, a lot of, I share all of my resources on my website at the bottom, because some people are on YouTube, some people are on Facebook, some people are on LinkedIn, there's different avenues, Instagram, different ways for people to share their stories, and then to kind of help, I think, bring about these needed changes, because there's so many things that need to change. Yeah, it cannot stay the same, and it just can't.
Yeah, I mean, even the case with the 1,000 children that were missing, I can't, I'm drawing a blank on the state. I want to,
Maybe I think they highlighted.
was it
Is that one of
Minnesota?
them?
Was it Michigan?
Maybe.
It was I can't believe I'm drawing a blank, but 1,000 kids disappeared into thin air, and the FBI really didn't bother looking.
Yeah. And what happens in North Carolina, like I'm sure probably many states, is once a child turns 13, they're considered a runaway. So like these kids that you see on milk jug cartons, most of the time, I think that there's a variety of issues even with the Amber Alert system, because many times it is, it's a family member. It's not, like a stranger that, like a child has been abducted by a stranger, because most of the time, it's someone that they know. But like in my case, my daughter was legally kidnapped. My ex used the system to file fraudulent, he had a fraudulent custody order created. He went to a county hours away, got a judge to hear an entire trial on custody without me there. I wasn't even, I was like that. They had no jurisdiction. They were 4 hours away. So they had a whole trial. He got an order, and the next day they had it printed for him to have me arrested for felony kidnapping. He got custody in that hearing, and so in my case, and then what happened was he took her, 4 counties away, and that's where she's been ever since. And so in my case, my child was legally kidnapped. Even though he was able to get me arrested for felony kidnapping, because they said I wasn't following an order that, they had just written the day before that I had no, awareness of. But, so, there is a lot of, I guess, different ways to look at all of this. But yeah, definitely, everyone's got, some tragic horror story about, illegal kidnapping, because a lot of it just truly is with the family court system.
Well, then I had gotten yelled at by someone by saying, you can't call it legal kidnapping because what they did was illegal. It's like, well, Senator Nancy Schaefer called it legal kidnapping, so we're going to go with that.
Yeah, that's another really big case.
Yeah. Because even mine were legally kidnapped based on false accusations and lies. And this is what people are doing to each other. And, we're dealing with personality disorders in these courtrooms that the judges aren't controlling. They don't know if they see it, or if they don't care to see it, or they don't want to deal with it, or they just go along with it. But they're just not.
And there's a variety of factors too. Like I said, like you said, the money is a big thing, and attorneys. And lots of times parents don't know, but when they hire an attorney, that attorney is representing them. So what that attorney says on their behalf is what goes, regardless if that's how you feel about it. And a lot of parents, unfortunately, learn that the hard way. They have a judge or an attorney that told a judge, whatever, or agreed with the opposing side. And they're, and a lot of people don't even understand what is happening to them until it's too late.
Yeah, it's just a shame that now we're going to have a society of very confused individuals.
Yeah. But yeah, like with what I'm doing is trying to help, bring awareness to hopefully, because I think this system makes you feel alone. And this, when you're dealing with it, they make you feel like, oh, you're a bad person. And, you did all these bad things. Like, I'm not married, and so they just make the most ridiculous things, that the system makes them a crime. As far as, like I said, with my case, a legal kidnapping.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when my child had been with me since birth, I gave birth to her and she never left my side. So how did I kidnap? But yeah, and then they create all these, big messes along the way. So I think if you're able to somehow focus throughout all of this on your mental health, whether you exercise, or, it's hard, it's a struggle, but, and throughout this, there are so many different feelings that you go through and emotions that, you're made to feel like you don't matter. And then, it all happens. But I try to focus on, like trying to exercise. And that's just pretty much how I survived this.
Mm-hmm.
And, just with my active advocacy, speaking out, like I said, we'll go to Washington on Saturday and we're going to raise awareness for mental health, but it's all surrounding this. It's the family court, it's the trauma. In the back of our shirts, it's going to say family court warrior, because I believe that's what we all are. And we survived it and we're still fighting it.
And I'm glad you're there to do this. I wish I could be there with you all. I notice in family court, whenever they shoot out a silver bullet, it's always mental illness. At least it's coming across me from parent after parent I've talked to. They're calling me mentally ill. I was called mentally ill. And how does a nurse that was, almost 23 years a nurse go mentally ill overnight?
Yeah. And we'll see, for them, once they label you, then they can start appointing more resources, and it's more money for more people for their campaign, and back we go with the whole cycle. Money, and then it just all gets drug out and we're all stuck in this cycle of legal abuses.
Right.
It's just traumatizing, not just the adults, but our children in every aspect.
Mm-hmm. And also legal abuse can be found in the DSM-5.
Yeah, I actually put a link to that on my blog also.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah, because that's something, it's when because I talk to so many different parents, and if I start talking about something they're not aware, I can just, go to my website, to my blog, copy a link, and that just helps get them, bring awareness to them, help them open their eyes. So like these things are happening to just so many different people, like, wow, this is really, truly a thing. And then more people, I think it empowers them, to fight for themselves. And, people choose to do it in different ways. One girl I work with, she had her children taken by CPS. She is now, getting ready to assist. She's on a campaign for a legislator in her jurisdiction. So if he makes it, if he, gets elected in, then she'll be working for him. And that's, one of the things that she chose to do in her advocacy work in order to help change this. But, we all have different things, I think, within the movement that we're doing. I think for you, even though you're not able to go like to Washington, you're doing this, like you're bringing awareness through your show. You're telling everyone, hey, there's a group of people going to Washington, it's family rights, but there's another event also that's going to be there, Million Parent March. Million Child March. And so, it's just another branch of different things that it's the same things that we're all dealing with, but it's just they have a different focus with that group there. Like the Family Forward group is focused more on, I guess it would be like CPS, but then it's still the family court dysfunction. And then the Million Parent March would just be, the Million Children. They had the Million Parent March a couple years ago, and I think they're still doing that. But I know this one's going to be the Million Children March, and I have those links both on my Facebook Aidileys page that you can also go to through my website. But on there, I've shared the information for where people are meeting, and so there's going to be security and different things like that too.
Where can people find your website for Aidileys?
It's aidileys.org, or you can find it at .com. So I have both those domains. So if you type in, http:// www.aidiley, or you can type in .com and it'll also take you there.
Yeah. I'll also put that in the podcast notes as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I mean, I wanted to talk to you today, let you know kind of like what I'm doing and help, anyone. I mean, maybe they hear a blippet of something like, wow, this affects me and maybe I can do something more. Or if they go to my blog and, find a resource that they didn't know existed that may help them in some way. For me, I think that's something, I say, even though I went to law school and I got a law degree, I'm not an attorney. I don't offer legal advice, but I will help guide you. I think for everyone, it's a different, like where they're at and what they're dealing with, but we all essentially are dealing with the same big things. So, if my blog, helps you find something, I think that's good. If like this podcast, you are letting everyone know that there's an event. I mean, I'm going to help bring awareness, through, and there will be tons of different groups there, I know, but for me, it's, whatever I can do to help contribute to reforming this system, because it has to, it would be nice to abolish it all, but then what happens with the kids? So I think there is a way to do it, but like you said, there's so much that has to happen to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it can, but we just have to, all of us that understand it need to just keep working and, find our passion and help. And I guess in that way, if we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to have you come back on, especially after this rally, if you'd like.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely take pictures. My 2 older kids are going to go. We got like shirts and they'll make the posters when we get there. But yeah, so, I mean, that'll be awesome. We'll definitely have pictures to share.
Definitely. That would be great. Well, hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel's a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I'm your host, Maryann Petri, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Amy Betts in the future and other exciting guests. Thank you, Amy Betts, for coming on. Thank you.
Thank you, Maryann. I appreciate it.